Hello and a very warm welcome to Weekly Current Affairs. Today is 10th of December and Saturday we will be taking up the miscellaneous components of this week. As you all know, this is one such series where we come up with current affairs on a daily basis of that subject, subject by subject. On Saturday, I, Madhusudan Reddy, will take up all the miscellaneous topics that have not been figured out in various newspapers and as well as in the various subjects. So today, I'll be taking up two different articles जिसमें prelims में पूछने का chances are very high. I'll be discussing this in very detail. So the first article which we will be taking up is Indonesia's Mount Semeru volcanic eruptions which are top alert status triggered. And there is also another volcano that is being erupted, that is Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii. देखो ये दोनों volcanoes है अलग अलग जगह पे erupt हुआ, and that too within a short span. In the last 1 week itself, there are volcanoes which have come up, erupted on and around 10 to 15 in number. So some were giving large scale eruptions, some are silently coming out without any big eruptions. So let's quickly see what exactly is this and what are these type of volcano. The first type of volcano which you see here is the Mauna Loa. This Mauna Loa volcano is present in the Hawaiian Islands and this is called a basaltic volcano. The basaltic volcanoes which you see it on the screen, these are flat flowing volcanoes जिनके अंदर blasting capacity नहीं होता. क्यों नहीं होता? We'll be discussing in this series itself. So this is one such volcano where the length of the volcano is near about 120 kilometers. That is on an average the length, agar मान लो, if this length is 120 kilometers, this is not just at multiple volcanoes, it is just one volcano where the eruptions are taking place. And this volcano has erupted after 34 years. For 34 odd years it is not much active. Silent activities are there, but इस बार जो eruption हुआ काफ़ी high range of eruption है. So this is one such type of volcano which we got to see. And the other type of volcano that got erupted is Mount Semeru. Mount Semeru is a type of volcano which is conical in shape. It looks like this, right? Now this Mount Semeru is in Indonesia. So yes, Semeru type of volcano is a volcano where it is conical in structure, but when you see the Mauna Loa volcano, it is near about flat and little bent at the edges. So what is the difference between these type of volcanoes? One is a conical, other one is a flat topped, which is looking like a shield, and the type of eruptions that are coming out from this volcano and that volcano are different. So why are they different? This is what we are going to discuss in detail. Let's begin. So firstly, to understand this, let us quickly get into the locations of these volcanoes, कहाँ पे erupt हो रहा है. To understand this, you need to have some basic idea of plate tectonics and some basic idea about rocks as well. When you have the knowledge of these two elements, then it is very easy to understand the type of volcano and the nature of volcanic eruptions. And there are different names when it comes to the volcanic eruption. They are named on the basis of their eruption and they are also named on the basis of the landform that are formed. So first, let me show you where exactly is the Mauna Loa volcano is. Yes, see here, Mauna Loa volcano is located in the Hawaiian Islands, and if you go a little more deep into, you'll get to see that Hawaii, it is an island, and this island is nothing but a composition of volcanoes. If you know the size of this volcano, it will astonish you, and the length and depth of this volcano. See, the volcano is near about 120 kilometers, and the depth of this volcano can go up to near about 9,000 plus meters. The height of the Mount Everest is somewhere around 8,848 meters, but if you look into this volcanic nature, the base of this volcano, it is going underneath the sea. So collectively, if you consider from the depth of the ocean, this is as tall as the Mount Everest. But currently, the height of this volcano is somewhere around above sea level, about 4,170 odd meters. That means the height of this volcano or the peak of this volcano is almost equal to the height of the Tibetan Plateau, that is near about 5,000 or 4,000 odd to 5,000 meters. Now the next type of volcano that got erupted is the Mount Semeru. So let me also show you the location of this Mount Semeru, because locational aspects will give you around 50% of clarity why they have erupted in this area itself. It is also very crucially important to understand the background of the plate tectonics which are involved in these eruptions. So see this is your Mount Semeru. Mount Semeru is located on the island of Indonesia. Okay. So here you need to know that this volcano is present next to the Indian plate which is subducting beneath the Eurasian plate. So whenever a volcano erupts, it can erupt because of two different reasons. One reason is it can come out because of a hotspot, or it can come out because of the plate melting. And the volcanoes can be of different types. First classification of major volcano can be done on the basis of the type of eruption which it comes out. See, there can be a volcano which can just simply tear apart the land and do not make much of a destruction. Now these type of volcanoes are called as fissure type of volcanoes. There can also be another type of volcano where the eruptions are very rapid and very viscous amount which comes out in the form of pyroclastic flow. So this is your Mount Semeru, and this kind of volcano near about falls into the category of the Mauna Loa shield type of volcano. So let us quickly understand the causes for the formation of the volcano which is Mount Semeru. Why this Mount Semeru erupted now? See, the Mount Semeru is located across the coastlines of Indonesia, and also you need to know few aspects regarding the plate tectonics. See, the Indonesia is present next to the islands of Indonesia, the volcano is present next to the plate which is subducting. Our plate of Indian plate is subducting under the Indonesia. So see here, let me try to explain you this with a diagram. Imagine this is the Eurasian plate, where here you have the Indonesia, okay, and rest of this is your Indian plate. Just understand. Imagine. Now let me try to show this analogy here. Our Indian plate is actually subducting. Imagine this is your Indian plate which is ocean all over, and this is the continental area of Eurasian plate. Imagine now here you have an island called Indonesia, right? So as this is your Indian side plate which is oceanic in nature, the oceanic plate being very denser, it goes into the mantle and melts also. See, the older the oceanic floor, it can even melt into the mantle. The younger oceanic floors are little less denser. The older oceanic floors are little more denser. Because of this, the older oceanic floors gets into the asthenosphere. Imagine this is all your asthenosphere, right? Yes, sir. Asthenosphere hai. And this is your continent. And here you have Indonesia. So let's see how the volcano starts to come up. As it goes down into the mantle or the lower parts of the asthenosphere, it starts to melt. When it starts to melt, there is volcanic activity which you can get to see, which is being erupted, and here you got to see the eruptions of this is your Mount Semeru. Right? So a Mount Semeru is coming out from the continental landmass. See, why is this Mount Semeru so much of acidic in nature, and why is it erupting at a greater rate with greater viscosity as compared to Mauna Loa? It is because whenever the volcano that comes out through the continent, what happens is that it starts to get mixed with the silica content. Now what is silica? Silica is nothing but the finest elements of your sand particles. Agar mitti ko, the sand particles, if you add to the rocks, they turn out to be impurities. So the melting point is usually different from the finest rock. So imagine you have different types of rocks. Let me show you. a few series which is also called as bovine series. This bovine series will give you a clear-cut picture why a volcano is acidic in nature and why a volcano is basic in nature. See, every rock has certain kinds of properties. Now, to understand this, you also need to understand the basic concepts of rocks. A rock is nothing but, imagine this is your rock. To define a rock is nothing but it is a collection of multiple minerals, and within these minerals it can have multiple elements. A rock is a collection of different minerals and that rock can have multiple elements. So there can be multiple minerals which are present in this. They can have different melting point. Suppose imagine you have A, B, C, D, E, F and G. These are different parts of a rock. So A can melt at 1000 degrees Celsius. G can melt at 500 degrees Celsius. F can melt at 400 degrees Celsius. So like that a rock cannot melt completely. Now this type of melting is called as partial melting. So as and when suppose one type of a rock melts under certain pressures and certain conditions, it can change into a different type of rock. Now imagine I started to add some impurities to this rock. Impurities means mitti, that is silica. Then the viscosity of the magma will start to increase. It is as simple as that. So you tell me, when we look into the viscosity or the mitti content or the content of, just a minute, the content of silica, that is mitti, on the continent is more or on the oceanic floor is more. Generally when a volcano, when it is coming out, the temperature of the volcano is more as compared to the continental landmass, because of which the area in contact will come in contact with the volcano and then it will start to get impure. When it gets to impure, it will turn out to be acidic. Why it turns out acidic? Because whenever you add silica to the magma or whenever you add silica content more, the mitti content more, the volcano acidic content will increase, right? But if a volcano wants to erupt from the bottoms of the ocean, imagine there is a volcanic material, for some reasons it is trying to come out from the oceanic region. The thickness of the oceanic region is, oceanic plate is hardly 5 kilometers, but this thickness can go up to 30 to 70 kilometers. So it takes little more time, but also this continental plate which is there, it is less denser and the oceanic plate is more denser. So the lava, it takes little more time to reach onto the continent, and before it reaches, it gets impaired by the continent materials itself. Now continent is mostly a composition of felsic material, that is your sand particles काफी ज़्यादा होता है. So that's the reason why the volcano, when it comes out, it starts to mix in the form of silica content and it turns viscous. It turns viscous, that means it looks like honey. When you look into honey, it is very viscous, right? So the volcanic materials that they are coming out onto the continent are most usually the ones which are viscous in nature. Because of this viscosity, the flow of the volcano is not that easy. So imagine when it tries to come out, why do they have the conical shapes? They have the conical shapes because imagine this is a landmass, and from deep down there is a volcanic material that is trying to come out. So as and when it is trying to come out, it starts to push the material. When it tries to push the material, the structure of the continent will start to uplift. It will be like this. The structure of the continent or the landmass will start to deform. Why is it deforming? It is because there is a push factor which is acting by the volcanic material, and finally the same volcanic material, it starts to erupt through various channels, and then this turns out to be a conical element. But when it comes to the oceanic crust, the thickness of the oceanic crust is hardly 5 kilometers. So that's why you cannot see not much of upliftment there. So all in all, if you look into, it is the viscous material which is trapping more amount of gases in these type of volcanoes, and also the material that is coming out here gets impaired by the continent silica. Here the material that is coming out is directly coming out from the layer beneath, which is called as asthenosphere. So let me take you to the Bowen series once. See, this Bowen series is one such series which tells you what kind of rocks has what temperature at a depth and what are the compositions of that. See, a rock generally has 1400 degrees temperature at certain depths. The more the deeper you go, you get 1400 degrees Celsius, and the material that is available is usually of ultramafic or ultramatic. Now when you come nearest to the surface, which is having around 650 degrees Celsius of temperature, now here you will get rocks of granite. Matlab, as you come onto the surface, near to the surface, the rocks that are coming out are granitic in nature. But when you go deep into the interior of the earth, the rocks that are present are ultramatic or basaltic in nature. You might have been heard that the oceanic floor is basalt and the continental floor is granite. Now why the continental floor is having granite and why the oceanic floor is having basalt? Here you need to understand that the oceanic floor is simply coming out from the layer which is present next to it beneath is the asthenosphere, and the asthenosphere is having high temperatures of near about 1000 to 1400 degrees Celsius, right? So at that depth of asthenosphere you will have basaltic rocks. So let me try to show you why do you have this. See, imagine these are multiple layers and this is your continent, and imagine this is your ocean. So, and you know that this is how the crustal layer is. Just below the crust you will start to find a layer called lower mantle. In this lower mantle you will have the upper portion of the upper mantle, this is a upper mantle, and this portion is considered to be crust, and this is your mantle, and also you can call this as asthenosphere. So this asthenosphere will be having materials which are of basic in nature or basaltic in nature. So this materials, it takes less time to come onto the ocean and it takes more time to come onto the continental land. As it comes up, it starts to mix with the impurities here, but as it is trying to come up, it will not mix with much of impurities. Directly within a short span of time it will come up, because only 5 kilometers and also density is high, so the brittleness and the different contexture and the texture or the characteristics are different here. We need not go much into detail about this. So finally when it comes out, the volcanic material is still hot, but when it comes out it has to travel long distances and it gets in contact with the continent and gets impaired by the silica content. So that's why this material is filled up with gases, and this material is consisting of various impurities which leading to the bursting like conditions. But here a volcano, when it comes out slow, smooth, and also it will not make much of big cones. But over a period of time, the same volcanic material, when it comes out, the same kind of volcanic material, it comes out of the ocean. That means today you have the Mauna lava volcano is of this type. That means it is coming out from the oceanic plate and finally it has raised above the surface of the ocean. So this is your basic type of volcano and this is your acidic type of volcano. So a basic volcano will have more temperature and an acidic volcano will lose its temperature because it is getting mixed with the impurities. So this is the fundamental difference between the volcanic eruptions, but on the basis of the type of eruptions and the landform that it forms, there are different names. Be it shield type of volcano. Now what is shield? If the shape of the volcano is looking like a shield, that is given as shield type of volcano. If a shape of a volcano looks different, where is conical, it is called as composite. If a shape of a volcano is such that it falls under its own weight, it is your caldera. Similarly, there is also flood basalt province. These are on the basis of the type of volcano which is present. But at the same time, you need to know about the difference between the volcanoes of shield type. Suppose Mauna lava volcano अभी जो erupt हुआ, that is your shield type of volcano, and if you look into the length of this is 120 miles. Earlier I told you it is 120 kilometers, I'm sorry. It is 120 miles, such is the length of the volcano, so big. Now, if you start to compare Mauna lava with another composite volcano, this is the size, Mount Rainier, or if you look into the Mount Semeru is very, very small. But look at Mauna lava, it is too wide. So this is the one which got erupted now in the year after 1984. Today, the composite volcanoes are continuously erupting, very active in nature. ये भी सबसे दुनिया का बड़ा volcano है जो erupt हुआ. Now I hope you understand that Mauna lava volcano जो है, it is actually balancing or lying on the oceanic floor, and the material that is coming out is of still basaltic in nature, right? And let us quickly look into the difference between acidic lava and basic lava. See, basic lava is also called as basaltic lava, the temperatures are more, and acidic lava is also considered to be the andesitic lava, or the Mount Semeru is of this type and Mauna lava is of this type. So here, see, it contains a small amount of silica. Yes, the silica content is less and the silica content is more here in the acidic lava. It is highly fluidic and it is viscous. It has a low melting point, yes, and it has high melting point, right? Lastly, the fastest flow is 20 miles per hour also it can blow, but this flows very slowly. It can travel along a distance of 60 miles, काफ़ी दूर तक जा सकता है. This cannot travel for longer distances. On the other side, these are not explosive. They are little explosive in nature, but the volcanoes of acidic are very explosive in nature. They are more dangerous. So volcanic tourism is mostly conducted in basaltic type of lava or basic type of lava like the Mauna lava. Now, the eruptions takes place within very short periods between explosions. But here the eruption takes place long time. Now why it takes long time? It is because the acidic lavas bahar aane ke liye there need to be gas that need to be filled, and once the gas is full it starts to erupt, right? So lastly, you will not find alternating layers here, but you have multiple layers of ash and lava, right? That's it for with respect to the volcanic content. And this is the major difference. This is your shield type, the Mauna lava, and finally this is your composite type, which is your Mount Semeru. And for more of such different types of volcanic content, this PPD will be posted in the Raj Malhotra IAS Telegram channel. You can pick it up from there immediately after the class is published, right? And on the basis of the type of eruptions, there are also different types of volcanoes, and that is altogether a different topic. Sometime later we'll be covering up, right? Now these are the ones which are on the basis of the type of eruptions. Now let's quickly move to our next article. Our next article talks about the Rajya Sabha clears Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill. Kali एक important bill which is a landmark bill which has been passed by the Rajya Sabha. Since last 3 to 4 months it is staying in the Lok Sabha and it has been passed. कल Rajya Sabha ने भी ये bill को act proposed to the act, and it has now been sent to the President's assent. So this is a very, very important article. In this important article we are going to look into few aspects. Firstly, we will be looking into the importance of the sites we have to know, and second, you also need to know what exactly is this amendment bill which is going to be act, what is the difference, and thirdly, what are the bodies that are involved in this Wildlife Protection Act, what bodies, new bodies came up since the establishment of this, and also the salient features of the Wildlife Protection Act as well as the differences between the older act and the newer act which is going to be formed, right? Firstly, why do we need the amendment of this act? See, the need for this amendment act comes from the controversies, and also firstly I would like to tell you that India was once blacklisted by the CITES. Now what is this CITES? CITES is nothing but a convention which India is a signatory to it. It is a convention which tells that there need to be the trade between species, on plants, on animals. This trade need to be very conducive. It need to be mutually agreed, and some important and endangered species need to be protected, and these species need not be traded, right? So this is the first aspect. Already India has once been blacklisted under this category, so a second blacklist is going to be something very not so welcoming. So that's why India is now has amended. Now in this there are some important aspects. Firstly, earlier the names that are present in this previous act were ambiguous. Suppose an animal can have a scientific name, an animal can also have a nickname, an animal can also have a traditional name. So some animals are having traditional names, some animals are having this scientific names. So the list of the schedules which are present in the Wildlife Protection Act, they are having different kind of names. Now that leads to the confusion, right? So that confusion is very ambiguous, so that's why the government has come up with the clear-cut confusions, and the bill now clears the ambiguous aspects of the names, right? So, and also some confusing for wild and forest officials on the ground of implementation. Kuch implementation grounds also there are some important aspects that need to be looked into. So first let us quickly see what exactly we have it in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. See, in the Wildlife Protection Act, which has come up in the 1972, its primary aim is to preserve three different aspects. One is your animals, other one is your birds, and then plants. So protection of these species and as well as trade in these species is prohibited if it is put into Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and there are some gradings with respect to the animals' importance in the environment and the ecology. So it also prohibits hunting of various kinds of animals, and also it gives you some list. This list need not to be hunted. So you all know a black buck which was once being hunted by a famous personality, Bollywood personality. You know what has happened, to what extent. So that is the power of the Wildlife Protection Act to some, where it will not be sparing any kind of nuances. So firstly, let's see what are the schedules in the Wildlife Protection Act of the previous act. So the new act which is going to come, there are some changes. First we'll look into the previous act mein kya hai, and then we'll look into the changes. See, the previous act has near about 6 schedules. In the 6 schedules, it says that Schedule 2 has absolute protection, and Schedule 1 is having complete and complete protection, whereas Schedule 3 and Schedule 4 are also protected, but the animals that are listed, if they are being hunted for some reasons, the penalties are very low. Now coming to the Schedule 5, Schedule 5 says that these are vermin species. Vermin species means they can be hunted if some threat is posed by them to you or to your farm, such as examples are your common crow, fruit bat, rats bhi ho sakta hai, or mice of other aspects which are legally considered to be vermins and they can be killed. But there are also other species which have been included in the Schedule 6 and they are prohibited for the cultivation, such as cannabis, such as harmful species. They are not supposed to be grown or commercially cultivated until and unless the government gives you permission. And lastly, the hunting enforcement authorities jo hai, they have the power to compound offences under this schedule. That means any enforcement agency, if suppose they found the element of hunting, now the enforcement agency can get you under the law. They can arrest you. The power of arrest is within them, right? So now once we have to look into what are the bodies that have been given under the Wildlife Protection Act, and these are the areas where the chances of preliminary examinations are very, very high. The first one is National Wildlife Board. There is also a State Board for Wildlife, Central Zoological Authority, and then you have NTCA, which is a very famous body, and this is a nodal agency for all the tiger and cats related developmental aspects. And the fifth one, Tiger and Other Endangered Species Crime Control Bureau. So this is also under the Wildlife Protection Act. Through this act, all these bodies have been set up. Along with this, in this act, it also says that the central government can appoint the director of the wildlife preservation and assistant director and other officials subordinate to the director. It is the central government who will be appointing. Now the same time, state government has also given the authority to appoint a chief wildlife warden. Now this chief wildlife warden is the head of the department in that state, and he has the complete administrative authority of the protected areas. Now this is with respect to the 1972 Wildlife Protection Act, but there are some changes which you will get to see in this appointments and the powers which are given to the Chief Wildlife Warden as well. And also see here, it is the state governments are also entitled to appoint the wildlife wardens in each districts, right? Now the Chief Wildlife Warden is the head of all the wildlife in the state. So in the current bill there are some changes. Now what are these key provisions or which changes? It says that there are near about 50 changes that have been brought up in this bill, and currently the Rajya Sabha has also signed it. See, firstly they have changed the definition, they have eliminated few words and they have added few words. Now let's see what are they. The words protection of wild animals, birds and plants, which is mentioned under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, has been substituted or changed with respect to the conservation, protection and management of wildlife. See, the ambit of this bill has now been increased. It says protection of wild animals, birds and plants. Earlier it should be a wild animal, birds or plants. Now conservation, protection and management of wildlife. Now what all includes in the wildlife? Now wildlife is a very big ambit where the definition is not much clear. So again it has left out to be the grey area. So the Chief Wildlife Warden will have some additional powers with respect to the definition of wildlife here, right? Now they also went in for rationalizing the schedule. Earlier in the previous slide we have learned that there are 6 schedules. Now that 6 schedules are cut down, and they said that currently the Act has 6 schedules: specially protected plants and specially protected animals, where there are 4 schedules, and lastly the vermin, which we have discussed now, common crow and bat. Now they are going to reduce the number of schedules for specially protected animals to only 2 schedules. Why? Because there is too much of ambiguity in these schedules, because some scientific names are included in the 3rd schedule, some the other traditional names are included in the 2nd schedule. So here comes the disputes and the disparities. So that's why the government has come up to be having only 2 schedules, and they are finally taking off or removing out the vermin species as well, right? So they have inserted a new schedule for the specimens listed in the appendices under CITES. See, what is this CITES? Firstly, CITES is Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species. See, this convention will help you make few laws within the country, because India is a signatory. So the current changes that we are doing is because of this CITES. So the Wildlife Protection Act has its own genesis from the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species. And nextly, under the Act there are some obligations under the CITES that the bill has taken into consideration. Now what are these obligations? It says that they are now talking about a management authority. Now this management authority which grants export or import permits for the trade of species. Earlier, who used to have the highest authority? It is the director or the Chief Wildlife Warden who has that authority. Now this management authority is now little bit widened. The scope of the central government is increased, and the scope of the state Chief Wildlife Warden has been reduced to some extent. Next, it has also said that there is going to be a scientific authority. The role of the scientific authority is that it prohibits any person from modifying or removing the species in terms of their molecular or in terms of their biological structural changes. And also, every person who is possessing a live specimen or this wildlife of the scheduled animals, they need to obtain a registration certificate from the scientific authority, right? And that scientific authority will give a signatory, and then it will be gone to the management authority. The management authority will finally approve it, right? And it also talks about the invasive alien species. Now invasive alien species ki earlier authority was with the state government. Now it says that it empowers the central government. See here, it empowers the central government to regulate and prohibit the import of, trade, possession or proliferation of the invasive alien species. पहले क्या होता था? It is the state government. Now central government is given some additional powers. Lastly, the 2 important aspects, that is your conservation of sanctuaries, that is wildlife sanctuaries, and conservation reserves, that is protected areas. See, the present act entrusts the chief wildlife warden to be the control management authority will be under the chief wildlife warden. But the chief wildlife warden has been appointed by the state government, right? So the bill specified that actions of the chief wildlife warden must be in accordance with the management plans of the sanctuary. It is not with respect to the management authority of the wildlife warden, but now they need to have a plans for a sanctuary, and that plans need to be adhered. So the wildlife warden, if he wants, he cannot change that plan. Now there is a planning committee. That planning committee will has to approve, and as per that these changes will be taken place. See, the plans will be prepared as per the guidelines of the central government and has been approved by the chief warden, right? Now the role of central government, the role of the communities are also taken into consideration. And lastly, it is the conservation reserves. Conservation reserves the government may declare areas adjacent to the national park and sanctuaries as a conservation reserves. Of course, this has been the practice since beginning also. The flora and fauna and their habitat are always protected, but now the bill empowers the central government also to notify this area as the conservation reserve. That means within a state, even the central government has the authority to tell that now I am going to put the area around this under conservation reserves. Earlier this was the work which is done by the chief wildlife warden, and that chief wildlife warden is the one who used to approve at the end. The final authority is the chief wildlife warden. After that it of course need to be approved by the central government, but now the central government is clearly mentioned in this act saying that they can clear-cutly demarcate, right? Last point, that is surrender of captive animals. Earlier, if you surrender a captivity animal or captive animal, you will be rewarded, but now they have also taken that reward. It says that the surrendered items becomes the property of the state government. Yes, no compensation will be paid to the person for surrendering such items. Yes, and also the penalties under each act or sub-act, they have increased. Now that's it with respect to this act. If you have any doubts regarding these aspects, you can directly message in the comment section. I will be addressing those doubts in the comment section. And one last, it is a question for you if you can solve this. This is a previous year question which has been asked in the UPSC preliminary examination with respect to volcanoes. So let me ask this question. The Barren Island volcano is an active volcano located in the Indian territory, and Barren Island lies about 140 kilometers east of the Great Nicobar. The last time the Barren Island volcano erupted was in 1991, and it has remained inactive since then. If you know the answer, please post the answer in the comment section. And if you have any doubts regarding all of these topics, you can mention in the comment section, or you can message me here. Only topics that are related to this session, please. Thank you, and see you the next week. We'll be coming up with more relevant topics. Thank you guys.